All right. Thank you so much for tuning in and continuing with the series on white noise or just offshoots from the podcast that probably have a little bit more to do with direct photography or just overall nonsense. Something that things that just don't go on the podcast, on proper podcast episodes. I just decided to do a little offshoot and including videos and things like that. And in this episode, I decided in the last episode, I showed the Tulum, just a quick slideshow of Tulum of a trip I did to Mexico back in 2004. And I decided, you know what, I should just start from the beginning and talk about what that trip was about and why we were there, and get into about as much detail as I can stomach, because, whatever. I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically in 2004, my mom and I made a trip to Mexico. My father died in July of that year, and we went down there to more or less kind of tie up some loose ends, see what's going on, and overall, just to get away from everything for a second. It's a big transitioning point in our lives, and things were getting ready to change a lot. And, I felt I needed a break, and, I think my mom did too. So off we go, and we start this road trip. We started off at that time in San Diego, I decided it'd be a good idea because we were going way down in south into Mexico. Basically, the deepest we were going to go down is in Tabasco, a little town called Cardenas, actually just outside a town called Cardenas. And Tabasco is, if you look at a map of Mexico, and if you look at the of the right side, right where the Gulf of Mexico basically bottoms out and starts to come back up the Yucatan Peninsula, that's where we were headed. Basically right at that point. That's where Tabasco is, and Veracruz is the state just north of Tabasco. And we were driving down there, and it's like a 5-day road trip. And in order to cut down on time and safety, and to be safer, I decided that it would be better if we drove through Texas, from San Diego to Texas, and then down through to Mexico through Texas. And because we were doing that, my mom decided, well, you know what, if we're doing that, we might as well go to Las Vegas, and, because to have some fun sort of thing and get our minds off of stuff and really just kind of start the road trip right, I guess. I don't know. So we did, and that's what some of the slideshow shows is there's some pictures of when we went to Las Vegas. And this particular slideshow just shows the photos that I took on the road from the car mostly, through the Southwest into Texas and right down into the last parts before we get into Mexico. And the first stop that we ended up going into Mexico, I remember we stopped, I think, in Corpus Christi or just outside of that at a little hotel there. And the next day, right after that, I drove for a long time, and we ended up in Tampico. And it's quite a bit of a drive. And I drove the whole way, so I didn't take a lot of pictures of that road trip. But I did have my camera out. My mom drove as much as she could on the United States side. She's not much of a marathon driver, but she rode a couple hours. But basically, after New Mexico, we stopped at Las Cruces. After New Mexico, I was the one driving the whole way down. And what I'm showing here are the pictures just specifically off of that road trip. It's a combination of 2 or 3 rolls. And of course, you can see some that are like, man, what the hell, what the fuck? And I just decided to include everything in there. I don't care. That's what this thing is going to be about. I mean, I'm showing the good, the bad, and the ugly on here. And in a weird way, and I know you guys have no way, or you guys or anyone listening here has any way to reference this, but there's really no way of anyone else besides myself knowing how basically dead on these photographs are in feeling. I know that for the most part, at least I know enough to know that these are absolutely meaningless to anyone that really isn't looking for something in them. It is a road trip, but these photographs really do carry the feeling that I had inside, some sort of empty numbness that it was just like we were going somewhere, more or less to officially tell my mom, my grandmother, my father's mother, that her child is dead, basically. And it's one of those things where she wasn't believing it until somebody came up to her and told her, and it had to be something, more or less my mom had to be the one to do it. And that just kind of opened up a whole nother can of worms that we'll get into later on, or maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to talk about that shit. But these photographs, just on the side, they're so disconnected from the land. We're on the road, and I'm basically shooting from the hip outside the window. And for a moment there, I wanted to call the entire project, Passenger Side Blues. And the name still has some sort of connection with me for some reason, although I don't know that I'm particularly married to it. But that's definitely what it was at that time. And it was whether it just seems like whoever was on the passenger side had too much time to think about what was happening. And you start to really kind of lose yourself in these sort of things. And I in order to get personal, my mom's not really wasn't there to emotionally support anyone, especially me, for whatever reasons. My mom and I don't connect very well on a lot of levels. And this trip, I think, would have been easier had many things been different. But that's that's a sad panda sort of thing. But as I look at these pictures, and you think about, and I've mentioned this in the other one, and I'll probably keep mentioning this over and over again, is that photography at its most basic point, it's to document and capture something. You can do a lot of things with photography. Of course, you can create art. Of course, you can do very erotic stuff. You can do very artistic stuff, landscape, very static stuff, very emotional things. And I'm very much into what Stieglitz called equivalence. And him and Minor White were really into this thing called equivalence. And I'll get into that some other day if you guys don't want to Google it. But for the most part, you take these photographs, and I look at them, and it starts to, I don't get sad in the sense like it doesn't bring me back to a sad state of emotion as far as that goes, but they are nostalgic, and they are from late October to November of 2002 or 2004. And at this point, they're over 16 years old. And you look at them, and I'm sure lots of things. Las Vegas is not the same as it was then. I only took a couple of snapshots of Vegas. And the world is a lot different than it was. And it's only 16 years, but yeah, the world is crazy. And I'm glad that I just decided to pick up a camera and just start snapping pictures off. And again, these are all just mostly snapshots, but I thought it'd be interesting to show just where this road to Mexico came from and what it's all about, and that sort of a gateway through the entire project. And it started on this road trip that we decided that we wanted to take, and more or less try to use it as some sort of cathartic event in some way, but I'm not sure it completely worked. The pictures, I didn't go through. These aren't the pictures that I'm 100% like. I didn't. What I'm trying to say is I didn't edit these as well as I could have. As you can see, I didn't even crop them down to the frame size. I just wanted to show what they are, and just get the project started. There just is enough photographs in there to just kind of show a desolate landscape at that time. And while it's somewhat meaningful to me, and this is another point, it's meaningful to me, it doesn't make it art. And if it's not meaningful to you, most of these are just snapshots. And in order for it to be considered art, I think it has to connect on a big level en masse to a lot of people. And I know that these have no real connection to anyone. There's no equivalence of anything on most of these, but these are just for me, to show off and to remember what the beginning of that trip was like. And that's a long fucking road going through Texas. I don't know if any of you guys have driven through Texas. It is quite the fucking drive. All right, that's all I got to say about these pictures. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you on the next one. Enjoy your youth.